Welcome to Make Shit Happen. My guest today is Eva Medilek. Eva, thank you for joining me over Zoom and thanks for accepting my invite. For people, even though I gave a little brief intro about you, but people who are wondering who's Eva Medilek, how would you describe yourself? Who will you tell them? How will you tell them who's Eva Medilek?
That's a really, really good question. I don't really get that asked that often, but how I would describe myself is I'm a high achiever and I'm highly driven as an entrepreneur. However, I do not consider myself a workaholic. I actually consider myself a high performer. And that to me means I like to create and succeed consistently
Mhm.
and create habits so that my success is sustainable and I don't burn out and lose my health, lose my mood, lose my relationships in the process. So I am a person who just loves to create and achieve and challenge myself to create something new and get out of my comfort zone. So when I'm always asked to do something new and exciting, that's like oxygen for me. So that's how I would describe myself, really.
Were you
And a
always like that?
mom,
Oh, and a mom.
and a wife, and a mom, and a dog mom, all the important stuff.
Awesome. Were you always a high achiever, or were you like workaholic before? Did you make some transformation? Tell me a little bit.
I wasn't always, to be honest with you. I would say when I started as an entrepreneur, that's when my drive kicked in because I finally felt like I was going after something for me and my passion and not just working for someone else's success. And so I became an entrepreneur about 10 years ago when I
Mhm.
turned 50. And that's when my drive really kicked in. Unfortunately, I wasn't a high performer at that time. I was just a workaholic high achiever. And that's when I realized that it wasn't good for my health. I was sacrificing some of the things that were important to me so that I could have success in my business. And, I believe I told you offline before that that's when, you know, my relationship with my husband, my new husband at the time, really started having some challenges, and I had to take a step back and look at the sacrifices I was making for success and recalibrate my life at that time.
Yeah, you did tell me a little thing briefly about that you were having problem in your relationship. Is that something you want to talk about? Something you want to expand? And I know you
I
did tell me that you used to be in dental business also, right?
Yeah, I was a dental hygienist, when I was young. I was a dental hygienist for close to 40 years. And so, like most of us, when we start our entrepreneurial journey as a solopreneur, so to speak, we kind of keep our day job when we are building the business until one can take over for the other. And so I found myself trying to do it all, like do everything myself. So not only work my day job, build my business, but also the cooking and the laundry and the shopping. And I was trying to do it all. I was trying to be perfect at everything. And what ended up happening is the stress and the overwhelm of trying to do it all, trying to do it now, trying to do it perfectly affected my health. I was holding a lot of stress in my body. It affected my mood. I was always, have you ever been around people that were always seem stressed and they never had time and they're always rushed and you can kind of feel that energy?
Mhm.
That's actually who I was. And people at work noticed it. My husband and I started having trouble in how we communicated with each other because I didn't have any patience left. I was just always exhausted. And but I always had the idea, and maybe some of your listeners could create, well, as soon as the business gets successful, or as soon as we have, the business I built at that time was real estate. As soon as we have a certain amount of holdings, then we can work on the other things that aren't working. And one day I found out that my husband was having an affair, and I knew that in that moment I realized I could lose it all. Everything that I was working for, the life we were building together, could all go to crap if I didn't take responsibility for who I was being and how I was showing up.
Wow. So how did you get past that, Eva? because that can be, I mean, you just said that and it's heavy. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, we had to commit. We had to make a decision whether we wanted to turn that breakdown into a breakup or a breakthrough. And I remember having the thought, like, first of all, that I shared in the responsibility for this breakdown in our relationship, but also, honestly, Sam, I thought this is going to make a great story one day, regardless of how we end up, because I knew in my heart my husband is a really, really good, integrous person. He must have been hurting at the level that he was in a self-sabotage. Some people turn to drugs, some people turn to alcohol. We all have our ways of self-sabotaging our lives and coping with some pain and hurt and stress that we have. And so we made the decision to commit to, now here's the key with us, we committed to the relationship that we wanted, not knowing if we'd have that relationship with each other. And here's what I mean by that. People are human and we make mistakes. So what we had to commit to was the bigger picture. What type of relationship did we want to create in our marriage? And we got rid of the old relationship and built a new foundation and a new relationship from the ground up. And that was probably 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And I have to say, we're together. I'm so proud of the work that we did. It was messy. It was painful. We had to go through the fire to come out on the other side to some oxygen and breathe. So I don't want to make it sound like we did all of this easily, but we stayed focused and committed to what was important to us. And it was that same high performance habit that we adopt for our business. I'm a certified high performance coach now. How we really stay committed to what our priorities and values are, and we don't let distractions or competing interests pull us away from that. And a lot of times people do that. We get shiny object syndrome, we move away, but we just have to stay focused on what's important to us. And
yeah.
that's how we were able to get through that.
Well, congratulations on that. You said shiny object syndrome, and I want to talk about that because uh, uh, a lot of us, they always see something shiny, object, and we deviate from our course and have distraction. At the end of the day, we all humans. Tell us a little bit about what do you think about that? Since you said that, I want to know. I want to see if you can expand a little bit more for
Well,
me.
we have shiny object syndrome because we are not clear and focused on what our priorities are. We have no clarity. And a lot of people who come to me for coaching, that's the first thing. They're in a state of confusion. Should I try this? Should I do this? Should I do that? And the next thing that comes along, like, oh, that's how I'm going to grow my business. Oh, that's how we're going to do this or do that or the other. And so I help my clients get clear and focused on what it is they want to achieve. And really, it's incremental. We try to do a lot of things at once, and we try to have it all, do it all, and be it all. When we talk about business, should we be on LinkedIn? Should we be on Instagram? Should we focus on Facebook? Should we focus on webinars? Should we do this, that, and the other? And we start to should all on ourselves, and we end up kind of all over the place. I like to call it not keeping the main thing the
Yeah.
main thing. And so when we get clear on what the main thing is, and this has been a huge learning experience for me, because I used to say yes to everything and every opportunity. And that contributes to the burnout and overwhelm, because I wasn't staying focused and staying in my lane. And we run out of time. I mean, how many times have you said, let's say in the last 3 weeks, I don't have time for that? How much time is that going to take? I'm too
Yeah.
busy. Or when somebody asks you, Sam, how are you? I'm good, but really busy, or if you've asked somebody that, we're really busy, we're really busy. But busy is not necessarily productive.
Yeah.
And
Busy is
productive is
ineffective.
not necessarily effective. So we really have to niche it down to figure out what action of integrity is going to move the needle forward on our priorities and values.
You know, you said something that I stand for. You know, always keep the main things the main thing, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone just messaged me the other day on Facebook, and they're like, "Hey Sam, you know, what is your morning routine?" And I said, "Well, morning routine is a little complicated, but I'm about to get in the car and drive. If you want, you can call me, and I'll talk to you for 20 minutes." This guy has been following me for a while, and he messages me. So I'm like, "This is my number. You can call me." So he calls me, and then he's telling me while I'm having my drive from my home to work. So I said, "I got 20 minutes. You can talk to me, right?" So he's telling me about how what he's doing, this business and this business, this business, and it counted about 7 different things he's doing. And I'm like, Edward, that's a lot of businesses, man. I'm like, have you ever heard of you got to have a entree, and I mean you can have a little side dish, but if you're gonna start your business, why are you gonna start 7 businesses at one time?
Oh,
Or,
wow.
or 6 businesses, or oh well, I can do this and I can do this. I'm like, well, I, you only have 24 hours in the day. Okay. What do you think about that when people just like they want to, they're like, man, I wish I could get this and I can get this and I get this. And he's like telling me how he's gonna have a tax office. And at the tax office, he's also gonna have, you know, his he's gonna have signs for his real estate. And so when people are doing taxes, they can buy real estate from us. And then we can also do the mortgage, and they can do the mortgage with. So I'm like, well, okay. And I mean, you know, it kept going on and on and on and on. And investment and this and this. And I'm like, that's all, you know, well,
Wasn't there a saying once that jack of all trades, master of
that
none?
that's
Yeah,
exactly what I told him.
that's
I
it.
told him the
Yeah.
same thing. I said, have you
Yeah.
never heard of this, Edward? Jack of all trades, master of none. I swear I told him the same thing because I'm like, how many businesses? So what do you think about? And I know you run into people who do the same thing. What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Well, you know what? It's busy is a distraction from connection. See, when you work with me, we'll go deep, and a lot of times what I hear from my clients is they got that work ethic and that way of being, usually from some early life experience or how their mom or their dad led their life, and they haven't really evolved. And most people I talk to about that, their parents have health problems or died of a heart attack or at a young age,
Yeah.
but they still, it's so buried deep inside of them that that's what they think they should be doing because my dad was a great man and a workaholic. Well, my dad was too, but he also wasn't connected to me in my childhood or my mom because he was always too busy to have deeper connected relationships. So I would look at what the underlying motivation and fear is from thinking that he needed to have all of that and do all of that at once. And once we get clear on that, he'll be able to get clear on what is the main thing he should be focused on, what lights him up. Because he might just be thinking he should be doing that because maybe somebody told him he should be, or that's how his dad did, or his uncle he admired did, or his mom worked several businesses at the time. And so we often repeat those patterns that were modeled for us. And sometimes we end up just as miserable as sometimes our parents were and not having those connected relationships.
But sometimes, and you're right, sometimes our parents did that, but sometimes we just, I feel like we want it so bad, or people want it so bad, and they're like, man, I want to make sure I can get it all before my time, before the time runs out, or before the opportunities run out. What do you, I mean, have
Yeah,
you seen
yeah.
that?
And that, you know what? Because we hear that all the time, we can have it all. We can do it all, but no, we can't. You got to get clear on what the important thing is. Trying to have it all and have um, that mindset is actually damaging other areas of their lives. Does he have time to have a morning routine, to work out, to spend time with his family, to have deeper connected relationships? Because I was in that same mindset. Like I was already 50 before I started to be an entrepreneur. Like I wanted to get everything in 5 years. And in that process, I nearly lost it all. So learning to that balance is not equal, but to really make time for what's important to us. So, you know what, if he's single and doesn't have any other relationships and prefers it that way, what I'm finding is that if you are spread out in so many different directions, not one thing is done well. And
Mhm.
so it doesn't mean that he can't have it all, but maybe now for the first quarter, this is what I focus on growing. And then the second quarter, I can add that. You
Yeah.
know, I would really say, but trying to do it all at once and do it perfectly comes at a price. Is he
Yeah,
willing to pay
I'm a
that price?
strong believer in, and I told him, I said, I'm a strong believer in, you have one main business, and then you can have a little dab here and there, but you can't spend a lot of time on those little side things. Um, and I told him, I said, look, I got a little, real estate business that I do.
Mhm.
I've done it since 2017. I did flips. I flipped some stuff, and then later on, I found out the flipping was not that good for me because it was taking some time. So I do some rentals and I buy, and I still do a little flip. But I said I don't spend more than 5 hours, maybe 20 hours a month,
Mhm.
doing that. I said
Mhm.
because and even at 20 hours, I'm like, I'm too busy, and I'm like, I start thinking, but like one thing you said about relationships and people start working. I mean, I'll tell you this. I started my business at a very young age. Started when I was 21.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've been in the same business for 23 years now. But I had kids at a year early age.
Mhm.
And one thing that I do regret is my kids, I felt like grew up really fast. And I didn't have that time to spend with them. So I try to spend as much time with them now. And people always say, well, work hard in the beginning, and then it pays off in the future. It just doesn't happen to a lot of people. People might work a lot, and then it might fail,
Yeah,
and then they
yeah.
work a lot. I mean, I was one of the lucky ones that, yeah, my business was successful, and I mean, now I have a lot more time that I can spend, with family and loved ones and
You
everything.
know
But
what's
still,
interesting? And if you don't mind, I'll speak into that a little bit. They did a study of hospice workers,
uh-huh.
asking them what was the number one regret that people who were in hospice and dying had. And the number one regret across the board was they didn't spend enough time with their families. People never say things like, I wish I had more money. I wish I had more businesses. I wish I had more cars and houses and things like that. And so when you are working off of a blueprint of your priorities, like we all are working hard for our families, right? But
Hmm.
is it costing us our families? Where do you find that you are giving things up so that your family can have a better life than you maybe have growing up? That's usually the motivation for all of us.
Hmm.
But when you talk to children, my dad's 88 now. The number one regret I have is that he didn't spend time with me as a child. And now that he's older, I'm learning a lot more about him and he's home, but those hurts, like I'm 60. Those hurts from 7 years old when he broke promises because he was working two jobs so that I could go to private school, and he was too tired to play with me, too tired to take us on vacation, to this, to that. We always have those people on vacation on their laptop. That still hurts to this day. And I would rather have that time. And I'm sure you may have that experience, your kids may have that experience. And thank God you're still alive to spend time with them now and not spend a lot of energy regretting the past. But what can we do moving forward? Just take a look at what your priorities are.
Hmm.
And there's no judgment on what they are, but really, there may be weeks that I tell my husband, I've got to focus on what I'm doing for 2 weeks, and then we'll plan a vacation or we'll go away for the weekend or have something fancy, and then it's just us. It's never going to be equal. So don't get me wrong. You're never going to spend equal amount of time at work and with family,
Hmm.
but the balance is going to be shifting. And so really just schedule in your priorities. Schedule in fun. My God, most
Yeah.
of us don't put that on the calendar. We put
Yeah.
meeting after meeting after meeting. I put fun on my calendar.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I won't have it because I love to work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I mean, I wish I would have heard this like long time ago, but I mean, still, one thing I'm like, okay, well, we scheduled vacations, family vacations, and I think we went out every year since I think they were like 5 or 6 on a vacation. Until I mean, like I said, my kids are a little older now. My youngest are 20-year-old, they're twins, and they don't want to go on vacation with us no more since last year. As of last year, they said that's it, no more. Okay. Because we dragged, on vacations every year because I'm like, well, I don't get to spend a lot of time with you. You know, I worked weekends because I was in furniture retail. I had to work
Right.
weekends, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and because money, in retail, money is made on the weekends.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I might. That's the only regret. Anything else, I probably wouldn't change a thing.
There you go.
You know,
There you
I
go.
probably wouldn't
I
change a
love
thing. I'll
it.
probably be one of those hospice patients.
Well, I wrote an article once for Brains magazine, and the title was it that infidelity saved my marriage. Because honestly, Sam, if that didn't happen, it was a wake up call for me. It was a smack in the face to really look at where I was prioritizing my time, energy, and efforts. And the person that I cared about most, I didn't have any energy left over to spend with him. And so we want to set ourselves up
So,
to be on our A game.
Eva, tell me something. You say you coach people to be a high performer and stuff like that. Couple of tips that you'll share with people who are listening that they have their own business, and it can be any business, like real
Right.
estate business or
Mhm.
a restaurant or something. Would you share some tips with us?
One of the tips that I love to share with people is that analogy of the race car. See, most of us enter our day in survival mode. How can we get through the day, get through our meetings, get through this, and we don't set ourselves up to win and put ourselves in thriving in the day to win the day. So if you notice when you see a race car go around the track, especially the car that's ahead and doing the best, suddenly gets off and goes to the pit stop, and they change the tires and they under the hood and they do whatever magic they do to cars. I don't know cars that well. While they're ahead, while they're in the lead, they're proactive. They're not reactive. We don't do that for our bodies. If we want to go further, farther, faster, and have as much energy to spend with our families when we get home or end our workday that we started out in the beginning, we've got to set our day up. So, like you started out, start with a morning routine that sets the intention for the day, what your priorities are, what has to be done, and make sure you go through your schedule. Schedule in pit stops, 10, 15 minutes every hour on the hour. Get up, move around if you're stuck at a desk. Take a break, go outside, get fresh air if you can, drink water, fuel your body and your mind, or even just sit quietly for 3 minutes and release. And then I would say transition before you leave work and enter in husband, wife, mommy, daddy, whatever role you're playing after work is over. Give yourself a transition exercise to leave work at work, to leave it in the office and be fully present with your family after. That's how you can set up your day to thrive and not merely just survive and get through it. And it creates an incredible amount of mental energy, emotional energy, and physical stamina to get you through your day.
A lot of people have challenges leaving work at work and, you know, bringing home to work, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, I was blessed, that I've always, was able to leave work at work. When I was, I always, someone always asked me, hey, well, how do you feel that you have so much stress? How do you feel? How do you, what happens? I'm like, no, I leave everything at the door, and
Mhm.
I can do it, right? But a lot of people face that challenge, you
Yeah.
know. And I was like, I have a lot of managers, because we have 7 locations and we have like 15, 20 managers. And I tell everybody, I say, hey, if you're having a bad day, let us know, because but leave home Problems at home, don't bring it to work.
Right.
Problems at work, don't take it back home. And a lot of people in business, a lot of people, at their jobs, they can't do that, right? Imagine you being a hygienist, right? And you're treating someone's mouth, or you're a dentist. Let's just put it, forget hygienist. Hygienist is cleaning, but you're a dentist and you're doing a root canal to someone. And all you can think about is you and your wife, or you, your husband, that problem, that big fight you had. You're not going to be able to treat your patient right. Or if
Mhm.
you're, a consultant, you cannot do your job right if you don't leave that home problem at home, or taking the work
Emotional
from home.
intelligence right there.
Emotional. How what kind of suggestions would you have for somebody? How
Well,
can
first
someone
of all,
practice?
first of all, why are you fighting with your wife? Stop it. No, I'm just kidding. But what I do is I have transitions. I get myself grounded and set an intention for who I want to be with my client. For example, say I have a client right after you. So I'm going to do a little bit of, I have my own personal routines. I have a little essential oils. I breathe in, I ground, I clear my mind. I do a release meditation technique that takes literally 2 to 4 minutes tops, where I can release the energy from this interview. Not that it's bad energy, but let's just say, for example, if it was you and I were married and we were having a fight and you just exasperated me because you didn't take out the garbage when you said you would, and I can't let that go. I would do a release technique so that I can be on my A game for my client after you. And then if I had a difficult client, or even a fun client, or whatever it's like, there's transitions. There's things we can do in transition to get us to release old energy and set the intention of who I want to be for my patient. I want to be highly skilled, highly interactive, connected, listening to them, whatever that is, if I was still in the dental world. And I do the same with my clients. I want to be able to give them what they need in that moment, and trust that I have the skill to give them direction to generate their own mastery of high performance in whatever we're talking about, whether it's clarity, energy, courage, productivity, or how to have greater influence. And so one of the things I do in high performance is teach people how to manage conflict, how to have these conversations to manage conflict, so that we win the process. And winning the process means the emotion that's generated in that conflict. Do you feel seen, heard, and appreciated and validated in that conflict? So once you are in high performance, a scenario like that is going to be rarer and rarer as we move into mastery of high performance.
Um, so one more thing that I want to ask you about. So first of all, I want to ask people who don't, you know, didn't get a chance or didn't realize what you're doing exactly. You're an executive coach, and you teach people how to do how to be a high performer. What other things do you do in your practice?
In my when you coach with me, we will set a foundation of relationships. Relationships are currency. They're currency in business and they're currency in life. So even before we start to go into the tenets and the core and then mastery of high performance, we set that relationship foundation first, and we learn. What I do is I learn about you so that I can coach you to your highest and best self. And so where your blind spots may be that may prevent you from implementing habits, practices, or principles of high performance. So I focus on relationship and communication and reactions, and how to set up powerful conversations and communications in your life and in your business.
How much role does a life, like a personal life, plays with business? What do you think, in your opinion?
I think how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Mm.
I really do. That's just it in a nutshell. If I'm going to overreact at an employee or a coworker, chances are I'm doing that at home too, and vice versa. And so once I learn how to have a powerful, effective communication, that happens at home too. So I think, you know what, people always say, you know, I'll be better when I have more money. You are exactly who you are, whether you're poor and broke or whether you have a lot of money. Money just magnifies who you really are. So if you're a jerk when you're broke, you're going to be a bigger jerk when you have money.
Well,
So
some people really are intense and they're passionate about their business, right? And
mhm.
they feel like, man, if I'm not intense with my employees or intense with my coworkers, they might not take me seriously. What do you have to say about that?
Why do they think that? I mean, I'm not understanding why, you know, that's why we do that relationship foundation piece on how people relate, because there may be a person in your life that you need to be intense with, but there also may be a person in your life that doesn't react to that intensive, you know, that intense way of being, and they back off. So who do you need to be? Who do you need to be with who you are in relationship with? And are you able to adjust and rise to the challenge? Because if you're intense and you're yelling at me, that's not going to work. But do you have the emotional intelligence to have a relationship with me and hear what motivates me to action and to success?
Eva, I have reading challenges. I have a hard time reading, and I mean, and just following through with it and understanding. Uh, it's a big challenge. I've had it since I was a little kid. But in 2010 or 2011, I think it was 2000, end of 2010, beginning 2011. I read this book that changed my life. The name of the book was Built to Sell. And one
Mhm.
thing that was in that book that says, work on your business,
Not in
not
it.
in your business, right?
Mhm.
And it changed my life. Honestly, it like changed my life, how I looked at business, how I did business, how what one thing, and the big takeaway for me on that was, I cannot do everything all the time, and I cannot be everywhere all the time.
Mhm.
People have that challenge, and I'm sure you have clients who have that challenge, who don't know
Mhm.
how to delegate the power, who don't know how to hand off responsibility, who think that if they don't do it, it's just not going to happen perfectly.
Mhm.
They don't
Mhm.
believe and they don't have faith in the people that they hire.
Mhm.
What do you say to that?
Don't we all have somebody in our lives that say, or maybe it was our parent, if I want something done right, I've got to do it myself, kind of thing. You know, here's what I say about that. There's an underlying trust issue that that person needs to deal with. And yeah, we probably all have had times in our lives where, whether financially we had to wear all of the hats, but the best investment that you can make is in yourself and in the support systems and leveraging your business. When I had my real estate, I still have my real estate investment company, I did it all. I wore all the hats because my husband wasn't fully on board and participating, even though we were business partners, until, because the book that changed my life was Rich Dad Poor Dad. But until I made it a success. And that was part of the problem. I was doing the bookkeeping, I was acquiring the properties, I was getting the financing, working with lenders. I was doing it all. This is while I was still being a hygienist and, running the household. And the amount of stress that that put on me cost me dearly. When we were healing our pain from the breakdown of our marriage, one of the things I gave up was control of the business. And I handed it to my husband, knowing full well that his level of participation would make it so that he would make mistakes and things would go wrong and there'd be bad deals. But it was the same learning process I had to go through when I was building the business. Not everything worked perfectly in the beginning. I had to be okay with giving up the business I built for him to manage.
Mhm.
One of the hardest things I've ever done, but one of the best things I've done, because the weight that was taken off of me, I knew that we had investments that would support whatever mistakes we made, and we had to go through that. And I had to trust him to learn from mistakes and not. We all beat ourselves up for mistakes because that's how our education system is. You do bad on a test, you get an F, you get yelled at from your mom or dad. Why didn't you study? Or you've got those people who got a B plus and you got a mom or dad and said, why didn't you get an A? So we all have that pressure. And
Absolutely.
that's where it comes from. And when we can relieve that pressure and learn to trust that we are enough, that know that we will make mistakes, but mistakes I look at as tuition. So, changing your mindset and how you view why you think you need to do everything, why you don't trust anyone else to do it as well as you. Yeah, nobody can do me as well as I do me, but let other people shine in their genius. So you've got to get out of your ego and not make it about you and be the type of business owner who supports other people to rise.
So, which is well said right there. Um, but I mean, how can someone just, I mean, like if you have to say it in two little words or maybe two little sentences, like you, or let me ask you another question. Let me ask you another way. Do you believe that anyone can grow their business if they don't hand off the responsibility?
I think you can, and it'll take longer and it'll cost you. What price are you willing to pay? We're talking about the cost of things. For me, I'm a lot older than probably, you and a lot of your listeners. My health and my happiness is a priority for me.
All right.
But the younger people who are workaholics are not don't know what they don't know yet. And so I feel that you can get there faster with prioritizing and keeping the main thing the main thing.
I like that. I like that. You said your happiness, means a lot. And I talk about, if you follow me, I talk about happiness a lot. Like there's two or three things are my core beliefs. Happiness is one of them. Saving money is another one.
Mhm.
But tell me, what do you believe in? What is your point of view of happiness? Or
It's
what
a
do you what,
feeling.
what do you think? What is happiness? Truly happiness?
For me, it's how I feel. Do I feel happy? Am I in gratitude? Am I practicing gratitude? Not just feeling grateful. Do I practice? Do I say gratitude? For me, if you ever follow me, it's going to be me and my dog. And yes, I have family too, but that little pup brings me so much joy. And it's a feeling of really having relationships that are vibrant, feeling energetic, feeling good in my body. Those things are things that bring me joy and happiness. And it's different for everybody. It's different for everybody. But I like to wake up feeling well, feeling healthy, feeling that I can make a difference for someone. And I have to tell you honestly, when I bring a client through a breakthrough and aha, and I hang up from that client, I literally do a dance around the house. Like literally do a happy dance because I love to express my joy of helping someone, get through a breakthrough where they'll have better results in their lives and they can feel joy and not just go through the motions. And so that means a lot to me. And I feel that when I built my real estate business, it was a tool or a vehicle to give me the freedom to be fully in my coaching business, which I am now.
Awesome.
And so there were stages.
Now you're coach, you're speaker, and then you wrote a book
I did.
called
I wrote a
Intimacy of
book,
Race.
The Intimacy of Race. I get to show it.
And you know
Um,
what? The article, the heading, the title kind of caught my attention.
I
The
know.
Intimacy of Race. Tell us a little bit about that book and what really made you write the book because it's a difficult subject, race. I mean,
Mhm.
people run from it. People
Yeah,
hide from it.
yeah, yeah.
Tell us a
You
little
know,
bit.
growth happens outside of our comfort zone. And so this book actually came out of my Facebook group of the same name, The Intimacy of Race. And when the George Floyd murder occurred and all of the racial unrest and tension on social media and in the news and everywhere was around, there was a part of me that wanted to do something and didn't know what to do. Now, my husband is European from Germany, and I have a lot of friends who are not Black and brown, and I knew the intention in their hearts. But I also saw on social media people were saying things and really getting canceled and ripped. Like cancel culture is at its ultimate highest, right? And so I wanted to create a space for white and white presenting people to have these uncomfortable, difficult conversations without being judged, because we are scared into silence because of the bullying that happens, because of the judgment that happens. So I wanted to create a space to have these conversations, to learn and to share resources. And I put on a live forum called the Allyship Awareness Forum, where I gathered 5 other powerful Black female leaders. And we created a listen and learn event where a couple of hundred people came on and listened to us speak about race, racism, unconscious biases, and spiritual bypassing from our perspective. And out of that, that forum, coupled with the Facebook group, was the inspiration to write the book of the same name, The Intimacy of Race. And the subtitle is How to Move from Subconscious Racism to Active Allyship for People of Privilege.
So, so this, tell me a little bit, like, give us a little brief, overview of the book with the chat, maybe 1 or 2 chapters or something like that, if you don't mind.
Well, let
Because
me
if someone
tell
is
you,
wondering, if someone is thinking about it and looking at it and saying, well, intimacy of race, okay, well, we get it. What is the book really about? You know,
well, it looks at, how white allies, what they can do to dissolve blind spots. And I share some stories of my dad was a bodyguard for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. a week before his assassination. And when he told me stories of being on the police force, one of the few Black cops, he got picked to be out of uniform to guard Dr. King because they knew about the death threats and they didn't want to put any of the white cops in danger. That's how he got picked. But we talk about, let's see, myths around race and racism is something in the book, because when we talk about, let's see, when it comes to conversations about race and racism, some of what you might be thinking is reasonable in your conversations are actually not reasonable. So all of a sudden you think, well, what could that be? What can be unreasonable? This chapter will let you have, I think there were 3 myths that were shared in this one. And one of the myths was, for example, when someone said Black Lives Matter, the retort was always all lives matter. And that's like saying, if I have a fundraiser for breast cancer and you come and say, well, what about lung cancer? That's just as important. Or what about colon cancer? The implication is not that those other cancers don't matter, but this is the conversation we're having right now, is about breast cancer and who that affects and how that affects. So we look at that. We look at microaggressions in the workplace. We look at what your motives are for having these conversations. And my favorite chapter, things white people say and shouldn't.
What is that?
And then we talk about spiritual bypass and diversity in the wellness communities, and also relationships and influence. And so, let's talk about the hair thing.
Okay.
You know that there's been huge discrimination about Black people and how they wear their hair in corporate and executive positions. For example, dreadlocks are not allowed there. That is conscious biases to have people look a certain way. That's a white standard. But if you go up to a woman of color who maybe has braids or longer hair to ask if that's your real hair or if that's a weave or can I touch it, that's a very, very inappropriate and a violation of our bodies that goes back into the days of slavery when we did not have ownership and control of our bodies. And
Uh,
it's hugely triggering.
yeah. I'll talk about that in a second. But I love the way you explained it about Black Lives Matter, as you use the example of breast cancer awareness, because the conversation is right now. So I've never heard anyone explain it like that. So I loved it because a lot of time, yeah, when people say Lives Matter, the rhetoric is like, well, all lives matter. What are you talking about? But yes, when you are in a breast cancer awareness or breast cancer luncheon, talk about breast cancer, not talking about lung cancer, liver cancer, or
Heart
or, or
disease,
heart disease. We're not talking about that.
COVID.
This is
I
this
mean,
conversation, this luncheon or this function is about breast cancer. So only going to talk about breast cancer. So I appreciate that. I was listening to a podcast with there is a lady who she's in lipstick business, and her lipstick is Lip Bar. She owns Lip Bar.
mm,
Okay, and it's sold in Target. She has done a great job. She was raised in Detroit, and ended up moving to New York, became an investment banker. She was working for what is the big investment bank in New York? Barclays, I think. Okay.
mm.
And she said that, when she was working over there, and this is before the Black Lives Matter thing happened, she was wearing, like people will ask her about if they can touch her hair. When she was saying that on that, I just thought that was pretty offensive. Why would someone want to touch my hair? And it was funny when you said that, but this was all before the Black Lives Matter movement. And that's something when you said what white people do and they shouldn't. I mean, that's one thing that you can't touch a black woman's hair. I just think it's invasion of privacy. I mean, I just think it's inappropriate. But when she was,
It is inappropriate, but what white people don't understand is the triggering, the ancestral and generational trauma that triggers for people who are walking around in black and brown skin.
yeah, well, as you can tell, I'm a minority too, and I mean, in America we live, unfortunately, where I don't talk a lot about race, but we, this is it's a society that we are grown or we're born in. I mean, that we are raised in. It's you don't have that racism because it's been instilled for hundreds of years here,
Mhm.
and I would say it's not only white people that are racist. All of
No,
us are racist.
we're all raised in the same racist society. And so what white people hear is only white people are racist, and that's not what we're saying. I personally have been been aware, have a heightened awareness of how I've supported white fragility in my life, and whether it's not speaking up when there's a microaggression or an unconscious bias directed towards me and letting it go, which stems from the fear of offending white people that goes back to Jim Crow laws and before. You cannot say anything offensive to a white person or you would end up lynched
Yeah.
or killed or beaten or your house burned or whatever. So not saying anything, silence is perpetuating the lie. But even our own, like within the black and brown community, is colorism.
Yeah.
You've always seemed to, the lighter your skin, you were allowed to work in the home, on the plantation, as opposed to working out in the fields, which made you a better class of Negro, and the classism and the colorism that goes on within our own communities. I mean, there's so much that the racist society that America was built on. I mean, America was basically a stolen land and country, and it was built on making people less than.
Well, a long time ago, I read this somewhere. I think when I was a little kid, uh, I read this in a book. and it stuck with me. They said if you work in a garbage factory, by the time you leave work, and even if you don't touch the garbage, okay, you're gonna smell like garbage. And
Mm-hmm.
if you work in a perfume shop, even if you don't spray perfume on yourself, by the time you leave work, you'll smell like perfume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's why the society we are grown in America. I mean, it's a lot of systemic racism, and everybody's racist. Asians are racist, Indians are racist, blacks are racist, whites are racist. Because I think that's all we know. Hispanics are racist. I mean, we use racism against each other, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, I hope one day we get out of this, but the only way we can get out of it is by, you know, by admitting it that we have some kind of
Yeah.
racism in ourselves.
Recognizing how racism shows up in you personally is part of the beginning of healing, but also recognizing how you benefit from racism and where it is in your family, where you've gotten it from, and what beliefs, subconscious beliefs that you may not realize that you have. I mean, my whole life, I was one or two, whether in school or in college or in communities that I was in, and I would get asked questions like, unbelievable that I could get a sunburn in the sun. Like, I have skin. Like the stuff people would ask me that I was different. Like, why am I the different one? Why aren't you different? Or why can't we just recognize that we're not the same without having one be the standard of which everyone else is measured by? So, it's powerful work, but the book is really a digestible, bite-sized look at, some key areas we could look at in our own lives so that we can be more aware of how racism hurts, harms, and what our racist beliefs may be. So I encourage everybody to get it. It's on Amazon.
Eva, where can people find you on social media?
On social media, I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn,
And
Eva Medilek.
and they can find you. It's just under Eva Medilek.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so people can find you on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
under
Hmm.
Eva Medilek.
Yeah, I
Eva,
think the Instagram handle is Eva Medilek, executive coach, or something like that. I mean, I don't know what, but if you just put in my name, you'll
search
see
Eva Medilek. I'm sure it'll come.
it.
Eva, we are coming towards the end of our show, and I always end the show by a couple of like this one or two questions. You already answered the gratitude question. Um, want to know if today was the end of the world, and let's just say all the you've lived up to 100 years, happy life, have have grandkids, and life was great, but now today's the day you're about to go meet your creator, and someone hands you up, everything you've written, the books, the YouTube, the podcast, everything has been destroyed. And someone gives you a hand you a pen and a paper and say, Eva, write your three truths or three things that will lead you to greatness that you can leave for your grandkids, your great grandkids, the future world. Three things you have to write, and you have a pen and paper. What would you write?
Well, it's a mantra that I live by every day: to be open,
To be
to be
open.
open to
Expand on it a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah, to be open to possibilities, to be open to challenges, to be open to celebrating differences, to just live a life of not being closed, but being open to receive and open to give. Because if you really want something, you should really give it first. And you'll be surprised at how you can be open to receive. A lot of people want more, 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 but it's like eating everything at a buffet. They don't have the space to handle more. So to be open and create space. Connection is the second word that I would leave. Connection is currency, connection is relationship currency, and really being present and connected in our lives and not being in a state of being on the hamster wheel and the treadmill. I don't have time, I gotta go. I gotta go to this. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. We never regret what we regret the most is not having that time to be more connected and present in our lives to enjoy it. And I would also say generosity would be the third one, because like I mentioned earlier, if you really want to attract something in your life, you've got to practice giving it, being generous with your heart. One of the things that part of how I help people, just especially people in my life, you know, when you are feeling sad, down, or depressed, go out and connect with people and be generous and smile, give so that you can have space to receive more. Hoarders don't, you know, you don't want to have that scarcity. You want to have an abundant life, and that is practicing generosity, but also being generous enough to receive. People, it's hard for people to receive. Oh no, I don't need that. I don't want that. I don't need that, which is why we try to do everything ourselves. But we don't realize the power in letting someone serve us and be generous with us. We are denying those people the chance to be of service to us when we put our hand up and stop. So part of being generous is learning to receive. And those are the three things that I would leave with people.
I love it. One last question before we end this interview. What do you think of humility, and what is your point of view of humility? And is it important in one's life?
It depends. It depends. It's funny. I was just listening to a chapter in Jamie Kern Lima's book, Believe It, and she talked about how women are taught to be humble because showing ego is a bad thing. And I say being humility can keep you playing small, and it's more apt to happen for women than for men. Really talking about your accomplishments and sharing your story can be someone else's survival guide. So we can be humble to a fault where other people don't get a chance to see our genius and know our story, and it doesn't work to inspire. Or we can just, it, like I said, it depends. It depends on the situation. And, I think being humble can be a good thing, but it also can be detrimental to living a life of inspiration and influence and motivation for other people. A story not shared doesn't serve. And so, what I'd like to leave your listeners with is, if any of this resonated and they really want to know more about high performance, the easiest way to get to me, other than social media, is to go to talkwitheva.com so that we can map out your success strategy without sacrificing what's important to you. So it's talkwitheva.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Everyone heard it right here. Talkwitheva.com, or find you on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Take a look and see everything you're doing. I know you can also YouTube Eva Medilek on YouTube. Search on YouTube Eva Medilek and find some interesting things about you. Eva, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for coming on my show. And I appreciate it. Now, and I really want to thank you for your time that you donated, because time is such a commodity you can't go buy, and I appreciate that. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you for sharing everything with us, and I enjoyed it, and I hope everyone enjoys it just as much as I did. Thank you, and hopefully I'll see you again one more time. Hopefully, when you write another book or something you do, stay in touch with me, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.